November 1930. The shores of Anjikuni Lake, Canada. A fire that no one lit, a meal no one finished, and 30 people who were here this morning are gone. Joe Labelle had been trapping fur across the Canadian North for 20 years. He knew this settlement. He had friends here. When the path to Anjikuni Lake appeared through the trees, he expected the smell of cooking fire, the sound of children. He had been walking toward it for 3 days. What he found instead would haunt him for the rest of his life and baffle investigators for decades. The settlement was intact, not ransacked, not burned, not destroyed. It was simply empty, as if every single person had stepped outside for a moment and never come back. The food was still cooking. A jacket lay half-finished, mid-stitch. The rifles, the single most essential tool for survival in the Canadian North, had been left behind. The sled dogs had been tied to their posts. They had not been freed. They had not broken loose. They had simply been left, and they died of starvation in the cold. Which means whoever left this place left in a hurry and did not intend to come back for them. At the edge of the settlement, in the burial ground where the village kept its dead, the graves had been opened. The bodies were gone. Not stolen by animals. The stones had been carefully moved aside. Someone had opened those graves deliberately and taken what was inside. Labelle rushed to the nearest telegraph station and reported what he had found. Investigators arrived within 24 hours. What they discovered only deepened the mystery. 30 inhabitants, no bodies, no tracks in the snow leading away in any direction, no sign of struggle, no blood, no evidence of a predator attack. The settlement simply existed in a state of sudden, mid-moment abandonment. The people who lived here were Inuit, a community that had survived the brutal Canadian North for generations. They hunted caribou. They fished the frozen lake. They understood this land better than anyone. These were not people who panicked. And this was November in the Northwest Territories. Temperatures dropped below -30 degrees. To walk into that wilderness without supplies, without dogs, without rifles, was not leaving. It was death. Investigators spent weeks searching for answers, but every question led to another mystery. There were no footprints in the fresh snow surrounding the camp, not toward the lake, not into the forest, not back along the trail. 30 people, and not a single track. No distress signals had been sent to neighboring settlements. No warning, no message. Whatever happened, happened suddenly. The stew was still warm when Labelle arrived, which means the disappearance had happened only hours before he reached the village. And then there were the graves. Someone had opened them and removed the bodies of the dead. The story spread quickly across newspapers. Headlines described a village that had vanished without explanation. Reporters speculated. Investigators searched. And then, the investigation quietly stopped. No official explanation was ever given. 30 people remained missing. The most rational explanation suggests the community may have relocated. Inuit groups sometimes moved with the seasons, following animals or responding to changes in the land. But this explanation leaves a troubling question. Why would 30 people leave behind their rifles, their sled dogs, their supplies, and walk into the frozen wilderness without telling anyone where they were going? Another possibility is tragedy, disease, a violent storm, or some sudden disaster that forced the community to flee. But there were no bodies, no signs of illness, no wreckage, no evidence that any disaster had struck the settlement, and none of this explains the opened graves. There is also another theory, one rooted in the beliefs of the people who lived closest to this land. Years later, elders from nearby communities spoke of unusual events around Anjikuni Lake during that time. Strange lights in the sky, animals behaving in ways they had never seen before, a silence that seemed to fall over the region before the disappearance. No investigator ever confirmed these stories, but no one ever disproved them either. And that leaves us here, 30 people. No tracks, no bodies, no answers. What we know for certain is simple. A settlement stood on the shores of Anjikuni Lake. A trapper arrived and found it abandoned. Investigators searched the area, and the people who once lived there were never found. A community vanished, and the truth of what happened on that cold November day may still be waiting somewhere in the frozen wilderness.